The stock portfolios of literally dozens of members of Congress have outperformed the stock market in 2021. And we have no new data on this thanks to one of my favorite Twitter accounts, Unusual Whales. This person compiled a list of all of our lawmakers who did in fact beat the stock market in 2021. And if you take a look, this is really a bipartisan effort. You've got Democrats and Republicans, again, let me reiterate, literally dozens of them, who seem to be such expert stock traders that they outperform the overall market. And this is of course not the first time this has happened. This has been a long-standing issue that I think has really come to light as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and what we saw happen in the Senate with senators essentially selling certain stocks, individual stocks, after they had a closed door briefing on the severity of the coronavirus pandemic before the general public really knew about the severity of the pandemic. This was early on in 2020. Now, if you look at that list, you've got 19 Democrats and 16 Republicans. So this is not a partisan, an anti-Democrat or anti-Republican issue. This is really a corruption issue that impacts both political parties. And they're also apparently doing real well when it comes to trading options, something that I'm not in any way an expert on. But let's take a quick look at that graph because it shows that in terms of trading options, Josh Gottheimer, Jim Langevin, and also Nancy Pelosi and Blake Moore, all four of them outperformed in trading options. All right, so with that said, I wanna just really show you guys that this has been an issue for decades. And it's not just about the fact that we have a double standard where if we were trading stocks based on insider info, we'd go to prison. They don't go to prison. This happens out in the open. There are no real consequences for it. In fact, there have been cases where all they're supposed to do is file their financial disclosures and they miss the deadlines, and there are no consequences for that either. There is no accountability whatsoever, and this has been going on for decades. And obviously, they have a bias in place because they're personally financially invested in companies that maybe they should consider regulating. But why would they regulate when they know they're personally invested? Anyway, let's take a look at this fun video showing you just how long this has been going on.
They have market moving information and they're gonna act on that information. I mean, information is king.
A groundbreaking 2004 study by a group of professors and researchers examined the records of US senators between 1993 and 1998. The study found that a portfolio tracking the stocks that the US senators bought during the same time period outperformed the market by 85 basis points each month. And a portfolio that tracked the stocks that the senators sold during the period lagged behind the market by 12 basis points. The study concluded that the senators knew appropriate times to both buy and sell their common stocks.
So again, Cenk, there are two things happening here, two negatives in this behavior. Negative number one, of course, is the fact that it's very likely that they're trading based on insider information, something that we would go to prison for. But I would argue the second consequence is far greater, which is if they have these personal financial investments in individual stocks, that bias will motivate or inform their policy making decisions. And that means that they're not gonna work for us, they're gonna work for their personal portfolios.
Yeah, so this is wrong 8 ways to Sunday. So first of all, them owning stock at all gives them an instant bias, because if you're debating, let's say, the minimum wage and you own stock in restaurants, well, the restaurant folks are very much against raising the minimum wage. Well, you have a direct conflict of interest against your own voters. It's so obvious. I mean, there's an argument to be made that they shouldn't even own mutual funds. But okay, fine, I'd take it, right? No problem. But we're not anywhere near that. So they not only own mutual funds, they own direct companies, and they know which companies. Oh, hey, I'm not gonna break up Google. So once they announce that news, I bet Google stock goes up. So, I mean, it goes on and on. The conflicts of interest, again, are very obvious for the average person. That's why about 95% of Americans think that they shouldn't do this. And shockingly enough, 95% of politicians think they should. But if all of that wasn't clear enough, you could see the data dating back all the way to 1993, take any period of time, study it, and the politicians somehow magically, coincidentally do way, way, way better than the markets and than the average person. And on top of everything else, they have insider information and they use it brazenly. So when, and one more thing is Anna is gonna give you the rest of it. Obama passed the Stock Act and the Republicans pretended to be in favor of it as well about 10 years ago. Understand that like at least half the things they pass in Congress are just marketing gimmicks so that the press, which dutifully back then declared it historic. Oh my God, it's such an important big change. Obama and the corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats should get such great credit for this. And then how many times have they enforced the Stock Act since? Literally zero.
It has.
It was always a lie.
Right, and especially in the House, the Stock Act, which mandates those financial disclosures, has no teeth. I mean, we talked about that on the show previously. So you're right in bringing that up, and you're right in mentioning how, while it was celebrated as historic, when push comes to shove, it didn't mitigate the behavior that we're seeing. And I want to now talk about honestly, the ridiculous proposals and what's really taking place in regard to changing this, right? So all these people are starting to give Jon Ossoff a lot of credit because apparently he is looking to propose legislation that would ban members of Congress from trading individual stocks. But he claims that he's waiting until he finds a Republican co-sponsor to the bill before proposing it. So let me just be clear. We still have the legislative filibuster in place in the Senate. So there's no way it would pass in the Senate. But more importantly, let's also not forget that Nancy Pelosi, who is the Speaker of the House, she makes decisions about whether or not bills even make it to the House floor for a vote. She's made herself very clear on how she feels about the possibility of banning members of Congress from participating in the stock market. Let's watch.
Madam Speaker, Insider just completed a 5-month investigation finding that 49 members of Congress and 182 senior congressional staffers have violated the Stock Act, the insider trading law. I'm wondering if you have any reaction to that. And secondly, should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress?
No, I don't know to the second one. We have a responsibility to report in the stock. On the stock, but I'm not familiar with that 5-month review. But if people aren't reporting, they should be. Because this is a free market, and we're a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
Yeah, trading on insider information is not, participating in the free market. It's illegal for regular citizens. And also, never mind the fact that she's supposed to be a public servant, not someone who uses her position of power to just enrich herself. But of course, we're talking about the United States of America, which is incredibly corrupt, full of corrupt politicians who don't care about anything else but their own financial interests and their own stock portfolios. With that said, though, going back to Jon Ossoff, why? Why is he proposing something that he knows would not pass? And more importantly, why is he saying, I'm not gonna propose it until I can find a Republican to co-sponsor it? That might give you this illusion that he's interested in doing this in a bipartisan way, but no, this is all just a game, it's a trick. This is my speculation, my analysis on it, but I think I'm right. He's just trying to do this as a stunt to point fingers at Republicans for not wanting to do something about this corruption. But he knows full well that this is not something that would pass in Congress, especially since there has not been a plan in place to do away with the legislative filibuster in the Senate.
Yeah.
It's just the truth.
Yeah, so Ossoff is not the worst of them, but nonetheless, here's my translation of what Ossoff is saying. Blah, 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 blah. It has a 0% chance of passing, he knows that. This is just marketing. And by the way, half of Washington, I'm sure, is scandalized by this. Ossoff said that there shouldn't be insider trading when the Queen insider trades. How dare he? Oh, wow, did he send her a strongly worded letter? Okay, you guys wanna know what you would do if you actually wanted to pass this? You would bring tremendous attention to it because literally in a poll, only 5% of Americans said they should be allowed to do this, okay? You have 95% of Americans on your side. It's an easy win as long as you attract attention to it and embarrass the other politicians. So you would strategically call a press conference saying, I'm tired of the corruption of Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. And you would talk about how she gained, what does she have, Anna? 69% returns. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. And you put the 69% return on a giant placard and you show it to the entire press. And then everybody would talk about, oh my God, Ossoff versus Pelosi. Wait a minute, did Pelosi really make that much money? Holy cow, that's ridiculous. How did she do it? Oh, look at her husband's trades, etc. And it would bring a lot of pressure and they would cave. But that would require courage and honesty, which almost no Democrat in the country has.
And by the way, it's not just Democrats, of course. In response to Ossoff's proposal, I mean, in some ways, what Ossoff did kind of worked because it was just a marketing ploy to point fingers at Republicans for not wanting to do anything about this corruption. But immediately following news of what Ossoff is doing with this proposal, this alleged proposal, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy came out and claimed that he's considering instituting a ban on lawmakers holding and trading stocks of individual companies, but there's a condition here. If the Republicans win a majority in the House of Representatives in November's elections, why? If you see this as a huge problem, why are you gonna wait until Republicans have control of Congress? If this is something that you genuinely care about, and it's something that allegedly Democrats are in favor of doing something about, why wouldn't you do something about it right now? It's because neither one of them, whether we're talking about Ossoff or McCarthy, genuinely want to do anything, think that anything will happen if they propose the legislation. It's just the way things work. And I want you guys to think a little more critically when these proposals are being put out there. Is there a plan in place to actually accomplish this stated goal? Or is this an attempt to do some positive PR, especially in a midterm election cycle where Democrats have failed to really provide any material gains for the average American and are looking for anything and everything to latch onto for their campaigning. And so with that explanation in place, I just wanna note that whether we're talking about Jon Ossoff or Kevin McCarthy, neither one of them deserve cookies. No cookies for you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'll add one last thing. I read Kevin McCarthy's so-called proposal. Even the quote you just read, Anna, that's not even true. He says, well, we will, but it could be this or it could be that, and we would only do it if my dog didn't eat the bill first. And so when you read the caveats, it's a joke. He's not even promising to do it at all. And look, we're honest about Democratic politicians. Find me a right-wing show that's honest about Republican politicians. They're all crooks. They're all crooks. They all do the insider trading. The two biggest people who got busted on insider trading during COVID were Republican senators. So one from North Carolina, one from Georgia. Please do not believe anybody in media that tells you that politicians are honest and wonderful, but only on your side.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, we really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.